All right, ladies and gents, hello and a very warm welcome. My name is Aram and this is it's on very short notice. So the Norwegian under 23 men's double contacted me and said, hey, Aram, can you give us some technique feedback? And as of the time of recording, it's roughly 10 days before the World starts, so there's not much you guys can change. But I'm going to try to give you an overall feedback of what I think works well and what doesn't. And I will give you one or two things that you can change that will have effect immediately. Let's get started. All right, guys, this is your low steady state rowing. So for you viewers watching this, let me briefly give you an overview of what the boys look like. So in low steady state, they've got this typical, can you hear this? Somewhat. So they've got this typical Norwegian style, reminds me a bit of Kjetil, but I think Kjetil is more upright. They do have a bit more layback, and overall speaking, it's not the layback that matters for me, it's using upper body weight. That's what matters most. So it's not how much you lean back and how much you lean forward, because this can easily become too much where the boat just bounces up and down like on a pony ride. What I'm looking for is, are you using the two most effective levers, and that's legs and upper body. And I personally regard arms just to be an extension of your lat. So your lat is right there, and use your arms at the catch as an extension. That creates the most effective force transfer. Because it's not just about force transfer from what your legs can apply here at the catch and throughout the drive, boom. It's mid-phase where you can actually start to floor your legs, and with that flooring the legs, you trigger the quadriceps, so the muscles here on the top, to overload the posterior chain right here, and this is when you create that deadlift. So I get a lot of feedback and say, hey, the deadlift, the rowing is like a deadlift. It is, but only halfway. For the first part of the drive, it's not a deadlift. This is a static hold. This is where you want to start to get the boat into motion with leg drive and a passive upper body positioning. You don't want to use that upper body swing too early. So let's talk about, but there are many details will briefly touch on, and if you want to hear me talk more on these, just please let me know. I happily do that. Okay, now that's their low steady state rowing. Not much upper body use at the finish, but overall looks pretty much synced and together. Not quite 100%, but you will see the fine-tuned differences here. The only good race footage I have is from Holland Baker. Good footage, by the way, you guys from Holland Baker. Well done. So that I think looks better than the low steady state that I got. Okay, let's start with the low steady state stuff and then try to see if we can see the same issues at high stroke rates too. Okay. So let's be picky. Let's be really picky. At that level, under 23, there's not that much gap from under 23 to A levels, to elite level. I remember when Olli Zeidler had his first appearance, I think he even was under 23. So if you're good, you're good. So here at the finish, there's one little issue. I think there's too much body motion and too little boat transfer motion. And that may be the result, and we see this at the Holland Baker footage. This is where you have an excessively stiff shoulder. It looks all loose and relaxed, I know, if you don't see the difference, but especially if you look at bow, if you compare bow and stroke. So just look at the shoulder positions. And mostly the one thing I look for as a coach is that part here. So the stretch forward. See the lat? That's when you go forward into the catch position, the lat is something I need to mobilize a bit. So it helps me personally and my athletes if I consider my arms not to be something where I actively catch and work, because then in German we call this knitting. So you knit around and try to balance the boat with your arms. What I think works best is if you go to the catch and you try to use your arms as an extension of the lat. So you go forward and your lat reaches out, not forward. But many times happens, and I think with you in stroke that may be the case, is when you go forward and you try to be long and this happens. You see, the shoulder now goes up, so we activate the deltoids. But what we want is activate the lat. See the difference? Delts, lat. Delts, lat. Once more, it's not visible. Okay, go forward, delts, you see the shoulders go up a tiny bit. That triggers a different muscle chain. Or low shoulders, lat. If you're not used to see this, it's almost invisible. But if you're coaching or an athlete and you're used to watch specifically for this, it does make a whole lot of difference. Why? Well, if you go forward to the catch, what we want is engage the trunk right from the catch. We don't want to move it right at the catch, but we want to engage it. You have to understand that the trunk, all the muscles in the trunk essentially, with a few exceptions, are not designed to create motion. So the motion, the upper body swing, is not created from muscles that we trigger in the back or in the abdominal area. We trigger it around the hamstrings and glutes because we want to pivot around the hip joints. This is where we want to hinge and swing. So at that stage, this should be a hinge around the hip joint. And that's what's often overlooked. So this is an issue that we find with many rowers, that we have excessive bends in the back somewhere, and the spine now all of a sudden has to handle that. So it's like creating an extra joint right there, but there is no joint. The thing is, there are very, very few bones in our trunk. We've got the rib cage and we've got the spine, but that's it. So there's not. It's not like we have, just like I talked about it with Charlie Tora when we said it would be better for rowing if we were insects, because then we have an exoskeleton which keeps the body, the trunk, always in the right shape. It's not the case. We have to hold it. So at the catch, the idea is, which muscles do we use to have most effect around mid-drive? It's the lat. The lat dorsal goes down all the way into the back. And that's the kind of muscle when we need to use and pre-engage. How do you pre-engage a muscle like that? You will stretch it, but it's not a long stretch. It's a tiny bit of stretch. So if you stretch the delts going forward, you're going to activate these. And that means the load goes over the top of the shoulder. And if you activate the lat, it means the load goes below the shoulder. So for me, a rule of thumb is everywhere where you put some deodorant on, they start to smell bad, these are the kind of muscles you need to activate. And the reason why is that the shoulders are likely to trigger an upward motion. And that's the tricky part. If you hop on a linear erg, this actually works. It's not super effective, but it works. So you can actually go forward like that with a bit higher, stiffer shoulders, and then roll early, because on a linear erg, many things work that have nothing to do with rowing. And in a boat-like situation on a bi-row, this doesn't work at all. You're just not fast. And therefore, here at the catch, and that's certainly true for you in the stroke, you need to have your shoulders a bit lower. On the other hand side, or in addition, you have to have a bit of a more stable low trunk. So that's another one of these issues that I see. If the low trunk, so right here, is not stable enough, but you're too round, then it's very difficult to have your shoulders low as well, because it creates too many artificial bends. And the body doesn't like that endlessly. So of course, the more stable you are here, and it really is enough if you feel like, okay, I'm trying to bring my belly button to my spines and doing this, okay? It's not doing that, it's doing this. And that allows you to manifest the trunk as a very stable core unit, and then try to engage the lat, okay? This is I want a loose top, but a stable low part. And with you guys, it's about on the edge. It's okay, but it's not as stable as it could be. So I think try to sit a little taller here in the low trunk. I will elaborate on this just in a moment when I give you the feedback that you can use at the Worlds. Okay, now as you go to the catch position, what works very well with you, both of you, is you manage just to raise your arms to get the blades into the water. So many people confuse this at the catch. Many people do a catch in a way where you come forward and then they already start to drive, and then the blade, you do a bit of an air stroke. Now, a lot of coaches try to solve this issue by saying catch faster, but we need to elaborate what needs to be happening faster. The vertical motion, putting the blade in the water, or the horizontal connection. And I want a quick horizontal connection. However, if you don't distinguish between vertical work, placing the blade, and creating horizontal connection, what happens is that you will probably hammer the blade into the water. And thus, your blade bounces deeper and up and then eventually it calms down around 3/4 stroke. Because a 3/4 drive, this is where the blades usually start to stabilize, and this is when the full load of the blade hits your body. The body can't handle all the full load at once. Boom, starts to disintegrate, which means either the shoulders start to do this or your arms start to bend, It's these tiny little subtle things that will lead to the point where you don't transfer as much force as your legs can actually apply. Now, the next thing is that here at the catch, when you place your blade as nicely as they do, you then can actually start to test the horizontal connection. The thing is, a quick catch is actually not a quick motion. Many people mistake this. A quick catch is a pretty slow thing. The vertical work is pretty slow. There's a dead point. If you check your seat, so even if you use the wrong metaphor, in my humble opinion, that you slide forward to the catch and then slide backward during the drive, in my humble opinion, it's the opposite the case. You pull the boat and the seat has wheels so that the boat can drive underneath your body mass. And then you push the boat away, and this is why your wheels turn again, because we have pins that reverse the motion. Let me know if I should elaborate on that further. But for now, so much that the wheels of the seat eventually will have to stop because they change direction. It's just how it goes. But your handles, your hand should never stop. And you have to use that tiny bit of dead point where the wheels of your seat don't move to sneak in the blades, and that's what the boys are doing very well here. That's good. At that stage, you need to test your the lat connection with your legs a bit more. So I always communicate this with my athletes in these Saturday sessions that we do here at camps. By the way, I'm already planning the next camp for 2024. If you're interested, please sign up for the newsletter. This is where I communicate all of that stuff. It's rmtraining.com. Okay, at the catch now, so when you're looking for horizontal connection, I'm testing with my legs here if my lats can hold that. It's like being at the start, and it says, quick start, attention, and you don't know if your blades are fully connected. You give it a tiny bit of push, not much. You don't want to do a false start. You want to test it a tiny bit. Once you've got it, okay, boom, you're connected. And that same kind of testing the waters is happening at the catch with your lat. And then you give a bit, you let it be stretched out a tiny bit by your leg force, but not endlessly, a tiny bit, and then you hold. And that means the force goes right down your body into the main core that is designed to withstand instability. Your core is designed to avoid motion, not to create motion. Okay? And that's where you use your lat to use that, how we call it in German, a compact trunk, if that makes any sense in English. Okay. Now you start to drive. At that stage, there are differences in how you transfer. So we have much looser shoulder here in bow, which I think is more beneficial than in stroke. In stroke, I think you're activating your deltoids a tiny bit too much, and your low trunk is not facing the right direction. Your low trunk is almost upright, same issue here in bow. At that stage, we will see the result of it. It's not a cosmetical thing where we say, just look different. No, you will see the effect in a moment. So now, at that phase, you can see, at least my impression is that the shoulders here on top are more tight than here. And as we go through the drive phase, this is where you want to play with upper body weight. And the thing about a double is, if you ever rode a double that went well, all of a sudden, your gearing, which means how you set up your levers, so the oars, feels too soft from one stroke to the next one. Then you lose that joint connection, so the force curves are not matching again, and then it feels too hard the next stroke, and you wonder what's going on. It's simply combining forces, and force is not just leg force, it's also upper body weight use. And upper body weight use depends on engaging your lat, pre-engaging at the catch, so that when you then start to use the upper body for a swing, then you've got the weight coupled. Quite often with my athletes, I use the analogy of a train pulling out of a train station. All these train couplings, the locomotive starts to pull, and the train couplings go clunk, 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 clunk. This is what's happening on the preparation to the catch during the first initial force application, and then it should be locked when the drive starts. But you cannot suppress this and say, I'm just going to brutalize this, boom. It's not going to happen. Everything tightens up and you're ineffective. So here at that stage, this is where we see slight differences. You see, it's just the position of the upper body. Now, I know anthropometics, so the body proportions in relation to each other, are different. They're deviating, I understand that. However, it is important that you have enough upper body swing potential left, and it should be about the same potential that is left mid-drive. And for my lame eye, this is not the same potential. There is a difference in the potential that is left. And we see this right here. So bow hangs much better than stroke. And the result is that we see a bit of a different, you see oars bend a bit more than here, a bit of a different motion, arms interfere, and then we see here the blade work at the finish being synced up again. So this is something that's a fine-tuned detail, and this may be the fastest under 23 double this year who wins the worlds, and I'm complaining. However, I believe that at that stage, mid-drive, and if you want to go for elite and the best, this is where you could gain a few extra seconds if stroke were just a bit lower with the shoulders, gave a bit more way with the lat, not with the shoulders, but with the lat here, a bit shoulder blade, and would let force run through the body a bit more. This is what I meant with give a bit and then hold. My humble opinion, stroke, you need a bit more of that. But that's just my humble opinion. So that mid-drive, you can both start to engage the upper body with the same potential that is left. It's almost the same. And you may be saying, hey, what is he talking about? That's like perfect. There are these fine details, trust me. If you try to bring boats to very high level and there's not much room, and this is essentially my job. I'm not a national coach anywhere. So I'm not paid because that's my position. I'm paid because I need to deliver results. And if you need to deliver results, you develop an eye for fine details simply because your success depends on that. That's the reason why I'm so picky. So in that case, you see this? This is where the effect starts to be different. And this is where you guys pull the boat. You don't pull the boat the same way. If you had a bi rower, you could sync up the force curves. You could sync up the force curves, especially you guys in Norway. I heard there's not much summer where you are. So this is where you could start to play with force curves and say, I'm going to have precisely the same shape as you have with the same stroke length, if you want with the same watts. But it's much better to have 30, 20 watts difference, but the same way to move the boat, the same understanding in handwriting. And there is a bit of a difference. This is precisely the picture that I was alluding to, referring to when I say, okay, this double is almost perfect, but not 100% there yet. Okay, let's look at there are many more things to talk about, but let's look at the Holland Baker footage once more. Okay, this is where you see the boat seems to work, but not quite. They said since then they worked on a couple of things. I understand that. Okay, cool. The boat is quick, but it somehow doesn't pick up speed right at the catch. You see this? The moment they catch, I cannot play this in slow motion because you need to see the dynamics. The boat does not immediately pick up speed. I understand that. Statistically speaking, that's the slowest phase at the catch. But it doesn't have to be. See this? Every time at the catch, the boat takes a while before it accelerates. Okay, the question is, how do we solve that? Now I come to the 1 or 2 quick fixes that you can use right away. And that's probably the only quick fix that you can use. Quick fix number 1, and you're quite disciplined with this anyway, is hold your knees at the catch a bit longer down, and at the release, hold your knees down a bit longer. That's probably the only thing. So if you're in a race situation, I don't care if you're junior, master, under 23, elite, Olympic, whatever you are, these are the things that usually work immediately. So step number 1, with the release of your hands, make sure you hold your knees down a little longer. What this does is, the thing is you want to hinge around the hip joint. So if you have your knees held down, it means that your hip joint stays in place a bit longer. If your hip joint stays in place a bit longer, you can actually hinge around the hip forward. And the reason why I'm so keen on that is that my experience, at least my experience, shows on the way to the catch, it's not very likely once you lose that you're not really hinging around the hip joint forward, but around somewhere mid to low back, and this kind of trails along, then you will never be able to make up for that, okay? So this is why it's much easier at the finish, where it's easy, at the release, where it's easy, hold the knees down. There's another metaphor that Charlie Torre actually pointed this out. I always do it that way. For me, it works well, but I wasn't able to communicate that. And he said, hey, Arm, what you're actually doing is you're pushing your seat back a bit. I said, yeah, absolutely. And ever since, I've been using that metaphor. So here, at that stage, when your hands lead out, this is where you hold your knees down and push your seat back a bit. What it does is, you see this on a biro very well, it starts to move the boat towards the bow. You initiate the mass exchange. And it may cause a bit of a stretch in your hamstrings, a tiny bit, but not much. And that leads to the point where you have to hold your knees down in order to push the seat back. So you see, it's a self-supporting cycle. And if you do this, and just within a race, things are going badly, and say, I don't know, we're not where we should be. The only thing that you should tell your athletes, or you tell yourself when you're in the boat, is knees down. Okay, good. Knees down makes everything clear, because then you can start to sync up the recovery as well and use the second acceleration phase where you pull the boat again, okay? But you need to be able to hinge around the hip forward with the hands away. Otherwise, you will start to slide in the boat. And that's, in my humble opinion, the reason why at Hole and Baker, your boat was not accelerating right at the catch. It has something to do with body weight distribution. So when you hit the catch, boom, right there. The blade work looks excellent, but don't be deceived by blade work alone. Blade work is wonderful, but here at the catch, you see this? It takes a pretty long time before there's almost a waiting time at the catch where the handles don't move at all. And that doesn't need to be. You blade like a scoop of ice cream. It looks like a cinnamon roll with vanilla ice cream. I don't want to make you hungry now, but this is how you get your blade into the water. And then when you do this, here, you want to make sure that your weight is on the seat and on the foot stretchers. It's not on the hands. And your arms are too stiff on the way forward. It's like that stiffness. See this? Over the top of the shoulders again. Why do you do this? Why don't you do that? Well, if you hinge forward like this, not all of your trunk weight is on the seat. A lot of it rests on the shoulder girdle, and whatever rests on the shoulder girdle will ultimately end up resting on the hands. And this is what makes it difficult at the catch to redistribute the body weight from your oar handles down to the seat when you need to start to pull on something or be connected. That's the reason. I hope the cycle closes now. Now, with this being said, I wish you all the best for the Worlds. There's much more you can work on, but for now, knees down. Simple as that. Knees down. Push the seat back. Shoulders low at the catch. Swing with upper body weight around mid-drive. That's what you need to do. Yeah. Ladies and gents, that's it. If you're interested in a buy rower, we have a couple demo models now that are sold with a bit of a discount. That's a pretty rare situation for us. But we've got a few here, almost new demos. If you're interested, I can bring one or two to Munich Euromasters Regatta in 2 weeks. We also ship worldwide. And there are a couple demos also available in the US with Rich DiGiovanna. I'll leave the contacts in the description of this video below. All right. With this being said, thank you very much for your subscription. That's how it works. The more subscribers I have, the more you comment, the more you like, the more you share, the more this channel can grow and the more time I can spend precisely with videos like these. A video from the Norwegian U23 double scull just before the Worlds. Hey, can you help us out? Hey, happily do this. I can commit time to that channel. Excellent. So help me to help others. With this being said, if you want to work with me, my website is aramtraining.com. You could start with joining the Saturday live classes, for example. It's a 45-minute session. I offer one in the morning. That's European time, morning time, and I offer one at late at night European time, which is around noon for most of you guys in North America. So should be suitable for Australia, Asia, Europe, and North America, and South America, and Africa. Did I cover the whole world? Not sure about New Zealand. All right, with this being said, thanks for watching. I truly appreciate your time. I hope it was worth your time, and I'm looking forward to see you in the very next video, which is going to be about Spain's first ever win in the Hindley double scull. Super interesting, very, very interesting video, and I'm about to edit it soon. Now, with this being said, subscribe not to miss it. I'm looking forward to see you in that video. All the best. Bye-bye.